George Russell and Max Verstappen have been quite popular in 2024 because of their explosive beef that erupted in Qatar. However, it looks like the Mercedes driver is still not ready to let go of things. The Brit is now adamant that the fight with Verstappen can and will continue because he's not going to let somebody bully his way on the grid. And given the fact that Mercedes have reportedly made tons of progress in the past couple of months, will Russell stand by his ground and will he prevail victorious over Verstappen, even though it might not be for the championship title itself? One of the most controversial topics in 2024 was the beef between Russell and Verstappen, with both of them not mincing words about each other's behaviour. Verstappen has gone on to the extent to call Russell a two-faced person because he speaks one thing in front of the cameras and the drivers, and when there are no microphones in the room with the stewards, he's being a completely different person. The thing that Max couldn't accept is that Russell doesn't have his own standards, and he cannot respect people like that on the grid, but the response from the Mercedes driver was quite fierce as well. Russell has been explaining how he plans to stand his ground against Verstappen and how he's learning to stand up for himself, which includes criticising the driving style of the four-time world champion as well. Coming out of a season in which he won 3 races, one of which he was disqualified from because of the weight limit of the car issue in Spa, Russell is now adamant that the new season in Mercedes can definitely show what type of driver he is and how Verstappen will have a lot to fear about in the upcoming period. When talking about it to a greater extent, the Brit added, "I'm not going to accept being pushed around and disrespected so openly and publicly. I've seen many people in life push and shove other people around to get what they want. You need somebody to stand up to individuals like that, and nobody has done that whatsoever with Max. Both of them are young bulls. Both of them have a lot of fire in them when they're on the track, and one thing that differs is the championship-winning experience from Max that could be detrimental to how this battle is going to go down." Russell is a principled driver in general, and while he didn't exactly earn the leader's position in Mercedes due to the controversial transfer that Hamilton made to Ferrari, it's not like Russell didn't have the potential to be a world champion under the current circumstances. When talking about his own values as a driver and how he understands where he stands compared to Verstappen, he said, "I'm entering my 7th year of Formula 1 now, and you do start to recognise where you are. You realise your own voice, the platform you have, and the impact you can make. I thought it was important for myself, and the fact that I was being pushed around publicly was the main driving force behind it. I was a bit frustrated watching the season play out at the front last year, how Max was driving with regard to being harder and sort of bullying others around, showing his aggression in a manner that nobody stood up to. The only driver was Lewis. He was the only person to do that in 2021. And that was obviously such a great season. I was frustrated watching the sport last year when there should have been a great title battle, and it was not. So those comments in Qatar tipped me over the edge." Even though Russell was not involved in the championship fight whatsoever, he understood the magnitude of Verstappen's behaviour and how he could be in the place of Russell as early as in 2025. And standing your ground this early is definitely a positive sign when it comes to the upcoming campaign. Red Bull's facing serious difficulties with the RB21, while Mercedes is adamant that they can compete at the front much more frequently with all of the changes being implemented on the W16. And this itself goes to show that a very epic battle might be waiting for us in the shadows. Russell has also talked about the chances that his team has thanks to the development of the car and the changes that they've made to the W16. And when talking about it to a greater extent, the Brit said, "There have been a lot of, I wouldn't say changes directly from last year to this year. These are things that have been in the pipeline for a long time. Items that we couldn't quite put on the car in 2024, but we've been working on them for a long time. We are optimistic it would be a good step in the right direction. You obviously never know what your rivals are going to have done. Throughout this year, with the thought of 2026, whether people keep developing or not is going to be quite intriguing. Absolutely, I have a chance to fight Max for the Drivers' Championship title. I feel ready. Everybody in the team is so motivated. I feel that these years have sort of been a trial and error, but every time we've had a chance to win, we've won. And that's what gives me the optimism that if we do have the car, we can achieve it." Of course, the greater task is not in front of Mercedes to build a race-winning car for Russell and Antonelli. And while the Italian is a rookie in the sport, he's not your ordinary rookie. He will definitely push for race wins from day one, and he will try to prove to Mercedes that he's not here to be a second fiddle to Russell. So for the Brit to stand his ground against Verstappen and to fight it out on the track, he would have to make sure that he is the leader in his own team, and then focus on the rest of the grid. but judging how he handled the 2024 season, especially over one-lap performance compared to Hamilton, we doubt that there's going to be any big issues compared to Antonelli, even though we know for a fact Mercedes didn't really play the fairest of games when it comes to the car's characteristics of Russell and Hamilton. It's not just Russell who stood his ground to Verstappen. We must not forget that drivers like Leclerc and Norris have expressed their own shift of attitude towards the four-time world champion, as they now understand that not having the fastest car hurts Verstappen much more than they could have imagined. In a scenario like this, Verstappen usually resorts to a more aggressive driving style, which involves closing the doors at the corners at the very last second and sometimes pushing the drivers off the track. But in Mexico, we've seen that the stewards are not tolerating a behavior like that. However, if he achieves this goal, which is to have his championship antagonist, in this case Norris, behind him and not leading the grid, then it's safe to assume that the penalty might not bother him a lot. When talking about the fight between Verstappen and what's being expected out of him, as well as the change that he will definitely imply from 2025 onwards, Norris said, "I need to get my elbows out against Verstappen and show I'm not willing to give him any positions. I also have to be a smart driver. You have to be a smart driver to go up against Max. It is always a lot harder when you're in the car than when you re-watch it. And when I saw some of the things I did last year, I was like, what the hell have I done that for? What an idiot I was." A very similar statement was said by Leclerc as well, who admitted that he now has what it takes to get the fight directly to Max's face. And if we're to judge by the proximate history, it looks like Leclerc is one of the few drivers who knows how to race Verstappen in a proper fashion without getting involved in a crash. But whether or not that would be completed in the upcoming season, given the fact that he has Hamilton as his teammate, time will tell. And one thing is for sure, the behavior of Verstappen in Mexico is highly unlikely to repeat now that everything is restarting from zero. The difference between last year's Mexico Grand Prix and probably every race that's going to happen in 2025 is that Verstappen was at the top of the championship standings when the Mexico Grand Prix was on the calendar. And we highly doubt that with this development and with Lewis in Ferrari, topped with the revolutionary design of the MCL 39, Verstappen will have any chance to have the advantage he had last year. He will definitely be the most serious threat for the championship because we've seen him win races with the third fastest car on the grid, something that hasn't happened since the time Keke Rosberg and Nelson Piquet did it in the 80s. But nevertheless, the table is reset now, and we're ready for a fresh start of the season. With all of this in mind, do you think that the Russell-Verstappen beef can translate into a fierce battle on the grid? And more importantly, do you think that the Brit can finally stand his ground and prove the leadership status in the team in a fair manner? Let us know in the comments below, and if you are interested in the F1 Drivers Bombshell on the F1 launch event, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.